Captain Vex stood on the bridge of his massive warship, looking at the glowing screen in front of him.
Ow.
The screen showed a small blue planet far away from the center of the galaxy. This planet was called Earth, and it was home to a species called humans. Vex had been studying these humans for many weeks now, and everything he learned made him more confident that conquering them would be easy. The Zephyrian Empire had been expanding across the galaxy for over 200 years. They had defeated 47 different alien species during that time. Some had been strong warriors, others had advanced technology, and a few had tried to hide from the Zephyrian fleet. But all of them had eventually fallen to the Empire's power. Now it was time to add humans to that list. Vex called his officers to gather around the main display table. The hologram showed detailed information about human military forces, their weapons, and their ships. Everything looked primitive compared to Zephyrian technology. Their energy weapons were weak and short-ranged. Their spaceships moved slowly and seemed to have basic armor. Most importantly, their military formations looked disorganized and poorly planned. "Look at this data," Vex said to his tactical officer Quinn. "These humans still use projectile weapons that fire metal bullets. They have not even figured out how to make proper energy shields for their ships. Their fastest ships are slower than our transport vessels." Quinn nodded as he examined the information. "Sir, our scouts report that human ships often fly in straight lines during battle. They do not use the advanced maneuvering patterns that we learned from conquering the Altarian fleet. Their communication systems are also easy to intercept and decode." Another officer named Zara spoke up from across the table. "Captain, we have observed their ground forces as well. They carry heavy equipment and move in predictable patterns. Their armor appears to be made of simple metals rather than energy-resistant materials. A single squad of our warriors could probably defeat an entire human battalion." Vex smiled as he heard these reports. The Zephyrian High Command had given him one of the largest fleets in the Empire for this mission. He had 50 warships, each one capable of destroying a small moon. He also had thousands of ground troops equipped with the most advanced weapons the Empire could produce. It seemed like using such a large force against the humans would be unfair. Far away on Earth, things looked very different. Commander Jake Morrison sat in a meeting room deep underground at the Human Defense Headquarters. The room was filled with military officers, scientists, and government officials. They had been tracking the alien ships for weeks, and everyone knew that first contact was about to happen. Admiral Lisa Carter stood at the front of the room, pointing to a large screen that showed the positions of the alien fleet. "The unknown vessels are maintaining position just outside our solar system. They have not responded to any of our communication attempts. Based on their formation and behavior, we must assume they are hostile." Dr. Sam Parker raised his hand to speak. He was a scientist who studied alien life, even though no one had ever seen real aliens before. "Admiral, I think we should be very careful about how we approach this situation. These beings have technology that is clearly more advanced than ours. But that does not mean they understand us or our capabilities." Jake Morrison leaned forward. In his chair, he had been a military commander for 15 years and had fought in several conflicts around Earth. "Doctor, what exactly do you mean by that?" "Well, Commander," Dr. Parker replied, "we have been observing their ships just as they have been observing us. Their movements suggest they follow very rigid patterns. They seem to prefer direct approaches and overwhelming force. This might mean they have not encountered enemies who use unconventional tactics." Admiral Carter looked interested. "Are you suggesting that our apparent technological disadvantage might not tell the whole story?" "Exactly," Dr. Parker said. "Throughout human history, weaker forces have defeated stronger ones by using creativity, adaptability, and unexpected strategies. The aliens might be making the same mistake that many human armies have made. They might be focusing only on raw power and ignoring other factors." Lieutenant Ben Collins, one of the youngest officers in the room, spoke up nervously. "But sir, their ships are so much bigger than ours. Our best fighters look like toys compared to their smallest vessels. How can tactics make up for that kind of difference?" Jake Morrison answered before anyone else could speak. "Son, I have seen small groups of determined soldiers defeat much larger forces. It happens when the larger force gets overconfident and stops thinking clearly. If these aliens think we are weak and primitive, they might not be prepared for what we can actually do. Meanwhile, back on the Zephyrion flagship, Captain Vex was making final preparations for the attack. He had decided to follow standard Empire procedure. First, his fleet would move into Earth's solar system and demand immediate surrender. Most species gave up at this point when they saw the size of the Zephyrian fleet. If the humans refused to surrender, he would begin by destroying their orbital stations and military bases. This usually convinced any remaining resistance to give up quickly. "Sir," Officer Quinn reported, "all ships are ready to begin the approach. Our weapons are charged, and our troops are prepared for deployment. Intelligence estimates that we can complete the conquest within 3 days." Vex nodded approvingly. "Good. Signal the fleet to begin moving. I want to be back at headquarters within a week to report our success. This should be one of the easiest conquests in Empire history." As the massive alien fleet began moving toward Earth, neither side fully understood what was about to happen. The Zephyrians were confident that their superior technology would guarantee victory. The humans knew they were outgunned, but they were not ready to give up their freedom without a fight. What neither side realized was that this conflict would change both species forever, that the galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. The stage was set for a battle that would surprise everyone involved. The Zephyrian fleet moved through space like a wall of metal and fire. 50 massive warships arranged themselves in perfect formation as they entered the solar system. Captain Vex stood proudly on his bridge, watching Earth grow larger on his main screen. The small blue planet looked so peaceful and helpless. He had seen this same view 47 times before, and it always ended the same way. "To open communication channels to the planet," Vex commanded. "It is time to give them the standard surrender demand." The communication officer activated the long-range transmitters. Within minutes, the signal reached Earth and was picked up by human listening stations around the globe. Admiral Lisa Carter received the message at Defense Headquarters and immediately called an emergency meeting. "This is Admiral Crix of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet." The translated message began. "We represent the mighty Zephyrian Empire. Your species has been selected for incorporation into our domain. You will surrender all military forces immediately and prepare for occupation. Resistance is futile. You have 1 hour to respond." The meeting room fell silent as the message ended. Everyone looked at Admiral Carter, waiting for her response. She stood quietly for a moment, thinking about the words she had just heard. Then she walked to the communication console and activated the reply channel. "This is Admiral Lisa Carter of the Earth Defense Force," she said calmly. "We have received your message. However, we must respectfully decline your offer. Humanity values its freedom and independence. We are willing to discuss peaceful coexistence, but we will not surrender our sovereignty to any foreign power." On the Zephyrian flagship, Captain Vex stared at his communication screen in confusion. He had expected immediate surrender, or at least panic and pleading. Instead, he had received a polite but firm rejection. In 200 years of conquest, no species had ever responded this way to the first contact demand. "Sir," Officer Quinn said uncertainly, "what should we do? This response does not match any of our standard protocols." Vex frowned and looked at his tactical display. The human fleet was moving into defensive positions around their planet, but they were not retreating or hiding. They seemed to be preparing for battle despite being completely outmatched. "Perhaps they do not understand the situation," Vex said. "Begin the demonstration phase. Destroy one of their orbital stations, but make sure it is not heavily populated. Once they see our power, they will reconsider." The massive Zephyrian battleship turned its main weapons toward a human communication satellite. The energy beam that fired from the alien ship could have destroyed a small city. However, just as the beam was about to hit its target, a small human fighter ship flew directly into its path. Lieutenant Ben Collins was piloting that fighter ship. He had volunteered for this mission, knowing it would be extremely dangerous. His ship was tiny compared to the alien vessels, but it was fast and maneuverable. As the energy beam struck his fighter, Ben activated his ship's emergency systems and ejected in an escape pod. The explosion of Ben's fighter created a massive cloud of debris that spread across the area. The Zephyrian beam was disrupted and scattered, causing it to miss the satellite completely. More importantly, the debris cloud contained several small devices that Ben had deployed just before ejecting. "What happened?" Captain Vex demanded, as his weapons officer reported the miss. "Sir, the human fighter deliberately intercepted our beam. The pilot appears to have sacrificed himself to protect the target." Vex was puzzled by this action. No other species had ever used such tactics. Self-sacrifice was not something the Zephyrians understood or expected. But he did not have time to think about it because his sensors suddenly detected something strange. The debris from Ben's fighter was moving in an unusual pattern. Instead of drifting randomly through space, pieces of wreckage were being drawn toward the Zephyrian fleet by some kind of magnetic force.
Ow.
Too late. The aliens realized that the debris contained small tracking devices and signal jammers. Captain Amy Rodriguez commanded the human fleet from her flagship. The alien formation carefully, waiting for the right moment to act. When Ben's sacrifice created the debris cloud, she knew it was time to begin the real battle. "All ships, begin evasive maneuvers," she ordered. "Execute plan, Delta 7. The human fleet suddenly broke apart from their defensive formation and scattered in what looked like complete chaos. Ships flew in different directions, some heading toward the aliens while others seemed to be fleeing. The Zephyrians were confused by this apparently panicked response. "They are running away," Officer Zara reported. "Should we pursue them?" But Captain Vex noticed something that worried him. The human ships were not actually fleeing. They were moving in complex patterns that seemed random but were actually carefully coordinated. Before he could figure out what they were doing, the first human attack began. A group of small human fighters appeared from behind a large asteroid. They had been hiding there, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. These ships were not trying to fight the main Zephyrian fleet. Instead, they targeted the alien supply ships that were positioned at the rear of the formation. The human fighters used weapons that the Zephyrians had dismissed as primitive. But these projectile weapons worked differently than energy beams. They could not be deflected by the standard Zephyrian shields. The metal bullets tore through the hull of an alien supply ship, causing it to explode in a brilliant flash. "How is this possible?" Vex shouted. "Their weapons should not be able to penetrate our defenses." The answer came from Commander Jake Morrison, who was leading the human ground forces. He had been studying the alien technology for weeks and had discovered something important. The Zephyrian shields were designed to stop energy weapons, but they were not effective against physical projectiles moving at high speed. As more human fighters attacked from different directions, the Zephyrian formation began to break apart. The aliens were trained to fight enemies who used similar technology and tactics. They were not prepared for opponents who used completely different approaches to warfare. Back on Earth, Dr. Sam Parker was monitoring the battle from the command center. He watched as the human fleet used every trick they could think of to confuse and outmaneuver the aliens. The Zephyrians kept trying to reform their battle lines, but the humans would not fight a conventional battle. Admiral Dr. Parker said to Lisa Carter, "I think we might actually have a chance. The aliens are very advanced, but they are also very predictable. They seem to follow the same patterns over and over again." Admiral Carter nodded as she watched the tactical display. The battle was far from over, but for the first time since the aliens arrived, she felt a spark of hope. The humans were showing that sometimes being different was more important than being stronger. The battle had been going on for 6 hours, and Captain Vex was beginning to feel worried. His massive fleet should have defeated the humans easily by now. But instead, they were fighting a strange kind of war that made no sense to him. Every time his ships moved into attack formation, the human forces would disappear and then strike from a completely different direction, down on Earth. Engineer Mary Johnson was working frantically in a converted factory. She had been given an impossible task by the military commanders. They needed weapons that could damage alien ships, and they needed them fast. The problem was that human weapons were not designed to fight advanced alien technology. Mary looked at the pile of mining equipment in front of her. These machines were built to cut through solid rock and move heavy loads. They were not weapons, but Mary had an idea. If she could modify the mining lasers and attach them to mobile platforms, they might be able to surprise the aliens. "Hey Pete," she called to her assistant, "bring me those plasma cutters from the construction site. I want to see if we can boost their power output." Pete Williams hurried over with the equipment. He had been working with Mary for 3 years and had learned to trust her crazy ideas. "Are you sure this will work?" "These tools were never meant to be weapons. That's exactly why it might work," Mary replied. "The aliens are expecting us to use military weapons. Probably have defenses designed to stop those, but they might not be ready for modified civilian equipment." While Mary worked on her improvised weapons, Sergeant Tony Martinez was leading a team of soldiers through the ruins of a city that had been hit by alien bombardment. The Zephyrians had landed ground. Troops in several locations, expecting to quickly capture important human facilities. But Tony and his men were making that job much harder than the aliens expected. Tony's squad was hiding in a damaged building, watching a group of alien soldiers march down the street below. Zephyrian troops moved in perfect formation there, advanced armor gleaming in the sunlight. They carried energy weapons that could cut through concrete walls, and their shields could stop most human bullets. "Listen up," Tony whispered to his men. "These aliens fight like they're on parade. They stick to their formations no matter what happens. We're going to use that against them." Private Joe Adams crouched next to Tony, holding a simple rope and some old construction materials. "Sergeant, are you sure this plan will work? Those alien weapons look pretty scary." "Joe, I've been fighting for 12 years, Tony replied. "I learned a long time ago that sometimes the simplest plans work the best. The aliens are looking for high-tech traps and sophisticated ambushes. They won't expect something this basic." Tony's plan was indeed simple. His team had strung ropes across the street at ankle height, covered them with debris to hide them, and positioned themselves in buildings on both sides of the road. When the alien patrol reached the trap, half of them stumbled and fell. They were trying to get back up. Tony's soldiers attacked from the windows above. The human weapons did not penetrate the alien armor, but they did not need to. The falling aliens had landed in awkward positions and some of their helmets had come loose. Tony's men used smoke grenades to confuse the aliens and then attacked with simple tools like hammers and crowbars, targeting the joints in the alien armor where the protection was weakest. The Zephyrian soldiers were completely unprepared for this kind of close combat. Their training focused on long-range energy weapon battles between organized armies. They had never learned how to fight enemies who used primitive weapons and guerrilla tactics in urban environments back in space. Captain Amy Rodriguez was coordinating a new phase of the human fleet's strategy. Her ships had been attacking in small groups, hitting the aliens and then retreating before the larger ships could respond. Now she was ready to try something that no other species had ever attempted against the Zephyrian Empire. "All units, this is command," she transmitted to the human fleet. "Up, begin Operation Scattershot." "Repeat, begin Operation Scattershot." The remaining human ships suddenly split up into dozens of tiny groups. Some headed toward the alien fleet, others flew toward the outer planets, and a few seemed to be heading directly into the sun. The Zephyrians were baffled by this behavior. "What are they doing?" Captain Vex demanded. "Are they committing suicide?" Officer Quinn studied his sensors carefully. "Sir, I think they are trying to divide our forces. If we chase all these small groups, we will have to split up our fleet as well, and we will not chase them," Vex decided. "We will stay in formation and wait for them to come back." But the humans had no intention of coming back the same way they left. Captain Rodriguez's the plan was based on something the aliens did not understand about human thinking. Humans were willing to take enormous risks if those risks might lead to victory. Dr. Nina Brooks was working in a secret laboratory facility that had been hidden from the alien sensors. Her team had managed to capture some pieces of Zephyrian technology when the aliens had landed their ground forces. Now she was trying to figure out how the alien equipment worked. "This is incredible," she said to her assistant. "Their technology is definitely more advanced than ours, but it's also more specialized. Every component has one specific function, and it only works in combination with other specific components." "What does that mean for us?" her assistant asked. "It Means their technology is not flexible, Nina explained. Our equipment might be simpler, but we can use it in ways they never intended. Look at this alien shield generator. It's designed to stop energy beams, but it actually makes their own equipment more vulnerable to electromagnetic interference. Nina had discovered something important. The Zephyrian shields that protected them from human weapons also prevented them from adapting quickly to new threats. The aliens had built their technology to be perfect for fighting other advanced species. But this perfection made it weak against opponents who used completely different approaches. Meanwhile, the scattered human ships were beginning to converge on their real targets. While the main Zephyrian fleet waited in formation, small groups of human fighters were attacking the alien supply lines and communication relays. These targets were lightly defended because the aliens had assumed no enemy would be able to reach them. Lieutenant Kate Wilson led one of these attack groups. Her small squadron had traveled all the way around the solar system to approach the alien supply base from behind. The Zephyrians had placed this base near Jupiter, thinking it would be safe from human attack. Remember, we only get one chance. At this, Kate told her pilots, hit the fuel storage tanks first, then target their communication equipment. We need to be gone before their main fleet realizes what's happening. The attack was a complete success. Human fighters destroyed most of the alien fuel supplies and damaged their long-range communications. More importantly, they proved that the supposedly invincible Zephyrian Empire could be hurt by determined opponents who refused to fight by the expected rules. As reports of successful human attacks reached Captain Vex, he began to realize that his assumptions about this war had been completely wrong. The humans were not fighting like any species he had encountered before. They were turning their apparent weaknesses into strengths and finding ways to use the aliens' own advantages against them. For the first time in his military career, Captain Vex was not sure he could win. The war had been going on for 3 days, and everything was different from what Captain Vex had expected. His fleet was scattered across the solar system, chasing human forces that seemed to appear and disappear like ghosts. Worse, his supply lines were under constant attack, and his communication with the Zephyrian homeworlds was becoming unreliable. Commander Rick Stone was leading the largest human fleet operation yet attempted. His ships had been modified with the new weapons that Mary Johnson's team had created. Mining lasers and construction equipment had been turned into surprisingly effective weapons that the alien shields could not stop properly. All ships maintain loose formation, Rick commanded over the radio. Remember, we're not trying to match their firepower. We're trying to confuse them and make them react to us instead of following their own plans. Rick's fleet approached the main Zephyrian battle group using a flight pattern that looked completely random. Some ships flew in loops, others zigzagged, back and forth, and a few seemed to be spinning in circles. The aliens tried to predict where the humans would go next, but it was impossible because the humans were changing their plans constantly. Captain Vex watched this chaos on his main screen and felt frustrated. Why do they fight this way? There is no logic to their movements. How can we respond to tactics that make no sense? Officer Quinn was equally confused. Sir, our computer systems cannot calculate their next moves because they do not follow any recognizable patterns. It is like they are making up their strategy as they go along. That is exactly what we are doing, Lieutenant Kate Wilson said to her squadron as they prepared for another strike. Kate had become one of the most successful human pilots because she never used the same attack method twice. Each time she engaged the aliens, she tried something completely different. Kate's current plan involved using the gravity of a large asteroid to change direction at the last second. The aliens would expect her to fly in a straight line toward their ships, but instead she would use the asteroid's pull to swing around and attack from an unexpected angle. The plan worked perfectly. Kate's fighters appeared to be heading directly toward the alien defensive line, but at the last moment, they disappeared behind the asteroid and came out on the other side, attacking the aliens from behind. The Zephyrian gunners had been aiming at empty space, while the real attack came from somewhere else entirely, down on Earth. Private Joe Adams and his squad had just completed their most daring mission yet. They had managed to capture an entire Zephyrian command post, using nothing but standard human equipment and careful timing. The aliens had been so focused on watching for high-tech attacks that they had not noticed a small group of human soldiers. Approaching on foot, how did you do it? Sergeant Tony Martinez asked when Joe's team returned to base. Joe grinned and pointed to his watch. We studied their patrol schedules for 2 days. These aliens do everything at exactly the same time. Every day. So we just waited for the right moment when their guards would be changing shifts. But what about their sensors and alarms? Tony asked. That's the funny part, Sarge, Joe replied. Their security systems are designed to detect advanced weapons and energy signatures. They completely ignored us because we were just carrying basic equipment and moving slowly on foot. The captured command post contained important information about Zephyrian plans and weaknesses. Dr. Nina Brooks and her team studied the alien computers and discovered something shocking. The Zephyrian Empire had detailed files on 47 different species they had conquered, but they had completely misjudged what made each species dangerous. Look at this, Nina said to her colleagues. They defeated the Altarians by overwhelming their energy weapons with superior firepower. They beat the Centaurians by jamming their communication networks. Every victory followed the same pattern. What pattern is that? Her assistant asked. They always use their enemy's own preferred fighting methods against them, Nina explained. They studied each species and then built better versions of whatever weapons and tactics those species used. But they never learned to fight enemies who used completely different approaches. This discovery was sent immediately to Admiral Lisa Carter and the other human commanders. It explained why the aliens were having so much trouble with human forces. The Zephyrians had prepared to fight humans who used advanced energy weapons and sophisticated battle computers. They had not prepared to fight enemies who used modified mining equipment and guerrilla tactics. Admiral Carter decided it was time to launch the largest human counterattack of the war. She gathered every available ship and soldier for a coordinated strike against the main Zephyrian fleet. But this would not be a conventional battle. The humans would use every trick they had learned during the past 3 days. The attack began with Engineer Mary Johnson's modified civilian equipment. Construction vehicles that had been turned into mobile weapons platforms emerged from hidden positions all around the battlefield. The aliens had been watching for military vehicles, so they were caught completely off guard by bulldozers and crane trucks that fired mining lasers. At the same time, human ships attacked from dozens of different directions using flight patterns that seemed to make no sense. Some pilots flew their ships upside down, others spun in spirals, and a few actually flew backwards while shooting at the aliens. The Zephyrian computers could not process this information fast enough to coordinate an effective defense. Captain Vex realized that his fleet was in serious trouble. His ships were designed to fight in organized formations against enemies who followed similar rules of warfare. But the humans refused to follow any rules at all. They treated the battle like a game where they could change the rules whenever they wanted. Officer Quinn reported with alarm in his voice. We are taking heavy losses. Our main battle line is collapsing, and our supply ships are under attack from forces we cannot even locate properly. How many ships have we lost? Vex demanded. 15 destroyed, 23 damaged beyond repair, Quinn replied. The humans have lost only 6 ships, but they are still attacking with the same intensity as when the battle started. Vex could not understand how this was possible. His fleet had started with overwhelming numerical and technological superiority. But the humans had turned the battle into something that Zephyrian training and doctrine could not handle. The final blow came when Private Joe Adams and a team of human soldiers managed to board one of the smaller Zephyrian ships. They had approached in a damaged human fighter that the aliens thought was just floating debris. Once inside the alien ship, they used simple tools to damage critical systems. This is impossible, Captain Vex said as he watched his fleet falling apart around him. How can such a primitive species defeat the might of the Zephyrian Empire? The answer was becoming clear to everyone involved in the battle. The humans were not winning because they were stronger or smarter than the aliens. They were winning because they approached problems in ways that the aliens had never encountered before. Where the Zephyrians saw chaos and randomness, the humans saw opportunity and flexibility. For the first time in 200 years of conquest, the Zephyrian Empire was facing defeat. Captain Vex knew he had only one choice left. He would have to ask for help from the homeworlds. Admitting that his mighty fleet could not defeat a species that the Empire had considered weak and primitive, the tables had turned completely, and the hunters had become the hunted. The final battle began at dawn on the fourth day of the war. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching as the largest human fleet ever assembled moved into position around the damaged Zephyrian forces. Captain Vex had called for reinforcements from the Empire, but help would not arrive for several days. Till then, he would have to face the humans with what remained of his original fleet. Commander Jake Morrison led the ground assault teams that were preparing to board the alien ships. His soldiers carried the same basic equipment they had used throughout the war, but now they knew exactly how to use it against Zephyrian technology. The aliens' advanced systems had become a weakness rather than a strength. "Remember what we learned?" Jake told his troops over the radio. "Their computers expect us to use energy weapons and advanced tactics. So we do the opposite. We use simple tools and basic strategies that their systems cannot predict or counter." Captain Amy Rodriguez coordinated the space battle from her command ship. She had divided the human fleet into small groups that could move independently and attack from multiple directions at once. This was the opposite of how the Zephyrians fought, which made it impossible for the aliens to plan an effective defense. "All units begin the final assault," Amy commanded. "Use everything we have learned. Show them that being different is better than being stronger." The human ships moved forward in patterns that looked like complete chaos to the aliens. Some flew in spirals, others moved in zigzag lines, and a few seemed to be dancing through space. But there was actually a plan behind the apparent madness. Each group of ships was targeting a specific weakness that Dr. Nina Brooks had discovered in the alien defenses. On the Zephyrian flagship, Captain Vex watched his sensors with growing despair. His remaining ships were trying to form defensive lines, but the humans kept attacking from directions that made no sense. Every time his forces moved to block one human group, 3 more groups would appear somewhere else. "Sir," Officer Quinn reported, "our formation is breaking apart. The humans are not fighting us ship to ship. They are attacking our ability to work together as a fleet." Vex realized that this was exactly what the humans were doing. Instead of trying to destroy every alien ship, they were targeting the communication systems and command structures that allowed the Zephyrian fleet to fight as a unified force. Without coordination, even the most advanced ships became much less effective. Lieutenant Kate Wilson led her squadron in the attack that finally broke the alien defenses. Her ships approached the main Zephyrian battleship by hiding behind a cloud of space debris that had been created during the earlier battles. The alien sensors could detect the debris, but they could not tell that human ships were hiding inside it. When Kate's fighters emerged from the debris cloud, they were close enough to the alien ship to use the modified mining equipment that Mary Johnson had created. The industrial lasers cut through the Zephyrian hull like it was made of paper. Because the alien shields were not designed to stop this type of tool. "Target their main communication array," Kate ordered her pilots. "If we can stop them from talking to each other, this battle is over." The attack was a complete success. The mining lasers destroyed the alien communication system, leaving the Zephyrian ships unable to coordinate their defense. Without central command, each ship had to fight alone against human forces that continued to work together perfectly. Down in the alien ship, Private Joe Adams and his boarding team were fighting their way toward the main computer core. The Zephyrian soldiers they encountered were brave and well-trained, but they were not prepared for the unusual weapons and tactics that the humans used. Joe's team had brought rope, hammers, and even some kitchen knives from the base cafeteria. These simple tools were more effective against the aliens than advanced military equipment would have been. The Zephyrian armor was designed to stop energy weapons, but it could not protect against a human soldier with a hammer who knew where to hit. "Keep moving," Joe shouted to his men. "We need to reach their computer before they can activate their self-destruct system." The human soldiers fought their way through the alien ship using tactics that would have seemed primitive to any military expert. But these primitive tactics worked because the aliens had never learned to defend against them. The Zephyrians kept expecting the humans to use advanced weapons and sophisticated strategies, so they were always defending against the wrong threats. Captain Vex knew that his fleet was defeated when the communication systems went down. Without the ability to coordinate his ships, he could not mount an effective defense against the human attacks. His advanced technology was useless if his forces could not work together to use it properly. "Signal the remaining ships to stop fighting," Vex ordered with a heavy heart. "Request immediate parley with the human commanders." Officer Quinn looked surprised. "Sir, are you surrendering?" "I am accepting reality," Vex replied. "We cannot win this battle. Our empire spent 200 years learning to fight enemies who were similar to us. We never learned how to fight enemies who think completely differently. The ceasefire took effect within an hour. Human and Zephyrian ships stopped shooting at each other and moved into neutral positions. Admiral Lisa Carter agreed to meet with Captain Vex to discuss terms for ending the conflict. The meeting took place on a small space station that was neutral territory. Captain Vex brought his senior officers, while Admiral Carter was accompanied by Dr. Sam Parker and Commander Jake Morrison. The atmosphere was tense, but both sides were interested in finding a peaceful solution. Captain Vex, Admiral Carter said as the meeting began, "Your empire has learned something important about humanity today. We hope this knowledge will lead to better relations between our species in the future." Vex nodded slowly. "Admiral, I must admit that my people completely misunderstood your species. We thought that superior technology would guarantee victory. Did not realize that different ways of thinking could be more powerful than advanced weapons." Dr. Sam Parker spoke up from across the table. "Captain, humans have always survived by being adaptable and creative. We learned long ago that the strongest force does not always win. Sometimes the most flexible force wins instead." "What do you mean by flexible?" Vex asked. "We mean that we can change our plans quickly when the situation changes," Jake Morrison explained. "Your forces are very powerful, but they follow the same patterns over and over again. When those patterns did not work against us, you could not adapt fast enough to try something different." Captain Vex thought about this for a long moment. "You are saying that our strength became our weakness." "Exactly," Dr. Parker replied. "Your technology is more advanced than ours, but it is also more specialized. Our equipment might be simpler, but we can use it in many different ways that you never expected." The peace negotiations continued for several hours. In the end, both sides agreed to a treaty that recognized human independence and established formal diplomatic relations between Earth and the Zephyrian Empire. Captain Vex would return to his homeworlds with a new understanding of human capabilities. "Admiral Carter," Vex said, as the meeting concluded, "I came here expecting an easy victory over a primitive species. Instead, I learned that there are many different kinds of strength. Your people have taught the galaxy something important today." Admiral Carter smiled. "Captain, we hope this is the beginning of a friendship between our species. Humans have always believed that diversity makes everyone stronger. Perhaps our two civilizations can learn from each other." As the Zephyrian fleet prepared to leave the solar system, Captain Vex sent a message to the Empire's high command. The message explained that humans were not a primitive species to be conquered, but a unique civilization that deserved respect and recognition as equals. The war was over, but its effects would be felt throughout the galaxy. Other alien species heard about the human victory and began to reconsider their own assumptions about strength and weakness. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the most unlikely heroes could change everything. On Earth, people celebrated their victory, but they also remembered the price of freedom. They had proven that determination and creativity could overcome superior technology, but they had also learned that peace was always better than war. The future was uncertain, but humanity faced it with confidence, knowing that they could adapt to any challenge that came their way.